If you're watching this video, it's because you're about to have a virtual event in virtual reality using the equipment in the lab, or you're about to participate in one that we're hosting. You're either going to be using the Oculus Quest, the Oculus Go, or the regular 2D desktop PC. And this video is going to cover how to engage in Altspace and how to get into one of our events using all of those three platforms. So we'll start with the Oculus Quest. So if you're using the Oculus Quest, this is the Quest. It fits over your head like this. And if you're in the lab, one of us will be here to help you put it on. The controllers are one for the right hand, one for the left hand, and they fit in your hand in a natural sort of fashion. You should feel triggers under the index fingers, triggers on the grips by your middle fingers, and if I refer to a trigger, it's the index finger trigger. If I'm referring to the grip, if I say grip something, I'm talking about this button over here. Each of the controllers has buttons and joysticks, which are located very close to the ends of your thumbs. So that should be a natural sort of reach. And if you've ever played any sort of video games, video game controller like a PS4, Xbox One, something like that, then if you hold these two controllers very close together, then you'll notice that it feels sort of natural, like a game controller. It's got buttons and triggers and joysticks right where you would expect it to be if you're comfortable playing a video game. So you sort of think about this as a regular game controller that's been sort of broken in half, and I've got half of it in each of my hands. And now I can move them around, because that's what these little rings do, is they track the positions in space of these controllers. But they behave very much like two halves of a regular game controller, if you want to think about it that way. So the first thing we'll take a look at is the Quest. So here I am in my Altspace home. Every one of our devices has a headset. Each headset has an Altspace user account already configured and associated with that headset. So you won't have to worry about creating an account if you're doing this experience in the lab. We've already got an account created for you, and you can just put it on and hop right in. Once I get into Altspace, I can use the joystick buttons to move around. So one of them rotates me, and the other one moves me around through the space in sort of a walking-like fashion. Some worlds allow you to fly, and that operates a lot like walking does, except I fly in the direction that I'm looking. So I need to look up and move forward with my joystick in order to actually fly. I can come in here and I can interact with these objects, and I'm holding the grip button to hold this. Then I release it, and I'm awful at basketball. Now, normally with the Quest, the right hand is the primary hand. There we go. I made one. And the left hand does different things, but you can configure that by going into your menu and going into settings. You probably don't have to worry about that for this initial demo. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, the first thing that we'll have you do when you come in the lab, is restart the tutorial. So you do that by going to this menu button down here, clicking that by pulling the trigger, going to settings, and then under general, I'll see restart tutorial. And I'll click that, and it'll take me back to my home environment. And the tutorial sort of walks you through everything. And it starts by customizing your avatar. We're just going to hit save on this. And then you get the demonstrations on how to use your controllers, right? So we can see that the rotate and the teleport button and the walk. And now it's going to want me to go to that arrow. And I can teleport to that arrow, or I can walk to that arrow. Teleporting brings out this sort of arced, sort of fishing line looking thing. And that little round cursor there is where I will end up at the end of the teleport. You grab objects in the world by using the grip button. And the tutorial is going to walk you through doing, look at that, first try. And then we have ended the tutorial. At the end of the tutorial, they'll put this teleporter here that takes you to a place called the info zone. Don't worry about that. We're not going to be concerned with that. The next thing that we're going to do after we do the tutorial is we're going to bring up the menu and look at people. And I'll see that I have online friends. And I'll see a friend here named SCSU VizLab. We call him VizLab Prime. And when you see him, click on this Go To button. And now I am in VizLab's world. And here is VizLab. So VizLab Prime is this red robot looking thing. We're going to use him to as sort of an anchor to bring everybody together. And we're also going to use him as a camera to record these events. So he'll just be sort of parked in the corner of the room, not moving, not doing a whole lot. He is quite powerful though, so don't upset him. The Oculus Go is a much simpler device. It only does 3 degrees of tracking, although it works just fine in AltspaceVR. The Oculus Go controller is a simple little doodad with only one button on it, and then it's got a couple other system buttons down here, but most of the controls, most of the interaction, and certainly the movement is done through this trackpad right here. So this acts as a button, but it also acts as a trackpad. So I can, a touch at the very top of that circle is different than a touch at the bottom of the circle. I can also track swipes across it, so it can sort of sense gestures. So some things I need to press on this to engage with. Some things I need to swipe in order to do some things. Most of the interaction is going to be done with the trigger, and the very top of that touch control right there. And then when we get done looking at the 2 VR headsets, we'll look at the 2D client. It works a little bit differently. Now we'll take a look at working in Altspace using the Oculus Go with the Go controller. So here I am in my Oculus Go home. This is VizLab 21, I believe, is who I am in here. Now, the difference between the Go and the Quest is that everything has to be done with this this little controller. And if I bring up the menu, I get this little preview of how things work. Basically, it works very similar to the way it works with the Quest. I still teleport around, except now I can't teleport and walk interchangeably. I have to decide if I'm going to be teleporting or if I'm going to be walking. And that is done through this button right here. So I look down on my little menu, and I've got this movement button that toggles between walking and teleporting. Now, by default, when you start walking, See, I got this little sort of vignette. It darkened around the sides of my vision here. That's to cut down on motion sickness. Some people, when this movement starts happening, they start getting very nauseous. And what they found out is that if they very narrowly focus the field of view, um, it sort of mitigates that motion blindness thing. It's kind of like when you're driving in a car and you get motion sickness and they tell you to pick a spot on the horizon and just stare at it. Okay, it's the same sort of thing. Interaction is a little bit different with the Go than it is on the Quest. I have just this one button to interact with everything. But aside from that, it's pretty similar. I toggle between teleporting and walking, and then I use the sides of the touchpad to rotate my view from side to side. Now, you don't have to be right up on top of something to interact with it. If it highlights like that, then I'm going to be able to. That was awful. Yeah. Then I'm going to be able to sort of pull it towards me. And then, just like before, go to menu. Oh, and now, Carnivore is my personal account, so I'm in here too. And most of these accounts are friends with both me and the Viz Lab. So when you're in here for the lab, if you see both of these accounts, we're probably going to be in the same place. I click Go To. Now we're going to go over to our good friend Viz Labs Prime's home space, which really should probably decorate more than just the default stuff. And there he is, sitting there, stoic. Oh, here's my Quest account. He's down on the floor because I set the headset down on the table. But that's pretty much operating things with a Go. It works very similar to the Quest. If a world is going to be able to work in the Go, it'll work in the Quest. You'll be able to interact with everybody in the environment, just like everything else. The only difference is you've only got one hand, and everybody. So if you're attending the event using the 2D client, we have several machines that are set up with the 2D client, and we're going to be using those for displays because the view is a lot steadier. It's a better field of view. It's just a better presentation. Also, I can set up a camera that gets rid of the user interface here, so we get a nice clean view. So that's usually what we're using the 2D for. But if you want to participate in this and you're one of the remote students, you don't have a headset, or maybe you don't like VR and you still want to come to the event, you can install the 2D client, sign in with it with a create an Altspace account and sign in with that. If you're participating remotely, you'll probably have to do that. If you come to the lab, then you can just use one of these machines and one of our accounts here. We'll provide instructions on how to set up an Altspace account. If you're participating remotely and you want to use the 2D client and you don't have an Altspace account, we can help you set that up. The 2D client works a little bit differently from the 3D client. So you move around using the keyboard and mouse, and you walk using the W, A, S, and D keys, kind of like a first-person shooter. And then when I move the mouse and I'm not walking, I get this little cursor that sort of tracks across everything. If I left-click on that spot, I'll teleport to that spot. So teleporting is the left click, and if I hold down the right mouse button, then I can look around. So by using a combination of the right mouse button and the WASD keys, I can get some nice fluid movements through here. Do slaloms and strafes and circle strafes and all sorts of stuff. Interacting with the 2D client is also a little bit different. So when I come up to an object I can interact with, I see it glow blue, and I tap the left button to grab it. And now I can move it around and aim it whatever I want to. If I hold down the right mouse button, I can still look around, so I can change my orientation, change the view, and then to release the object or activate it or throw it or whatever I'm doing, I tap the left button. If I want to throw, I have to hold down the left button. So I tap the left button to pick it up. I can either tap the right button to let it go, or I can hold down the left button to throw it. Aside from that, interacting with other Altspace users, at other events works similar to the way it does on the go in the headset. The microphones on all of them will pick up your voice, and you'll be able to hear other people talking, and they'll be able to hear you. And I think that's pretty much it for this video. I think we've covered the Oculus Quest, the Oculus Go. Nobody in here is going to be working with the Gear VR, but its interaction is very similar to the Go. So, watch this video. If you feel like making an Altspace account, I highly encourage it. If you have your own headset, go ahead and get around and play with it. Altspace is a great social platform. While you're here for the event, we'll probably go and look at a few different spaces, check out all sorts of different things. Hope you have a lot of fun, because that's